Morning, Amanda. We're asleep early, so I decided to give myself extra time with my coffee. Let's see if she stays asleep, shall we? Would be nice. Would be nice. Yeah. I opened the refrigerator and she popped her head out, but I'm gonna see if I can rock her back to sleep. Good morning. How's everyone doing? I know Stephanie was able to have coffee, so I know she's good. I saw the graphic. That graphic really, it says everything you need to hear in one. I mean, tell me that didn't do the job for you. Like, you don't need to say much when you have that graphic, am I right? Good morning, finally have. Susan, I have to tell you something. I owe you 3 slimes because we put your slimes on hold while you were traveling, obviously, no problem. I think I sent you 1. When you get it, just know that I confused you with another Susan and it wasn't on purpose, and tell me if that's true and I'll send you the other 2 when you get it. I just want to be sure because I think I put your label on a different Susan's package. So just let me know once you get it. Good morning, Lorenzo. Good morning, Ray. Does that make sense, Susan? But I just want you to know it wasn't on purpose, and it wasn't until they had already gone to the post office that I figured it out, and I was like, oh my god, there's 2 Susans, that's right. So just hit me up, and you know I'm good for them. I'm gonna get them to you, of course. But when there's multiple people with the same name, things get a little hanky. But I mean, there are worse things, right? The slimes are good, so that's all that matters. You know where to find me, obviously. We are passed out, which is really good. So I don't want this covering her face. There we go. Good morning. How's it going? Let's make coffee with a sleepy baby. Today, after book club, my work computer is playing tricks. No, we don't like that. This morning, after book club, she and I are going to try to go to a music class. It's by a different company. We're going to see if it works out. If we strike out 2 days in a row, I might cry, but we'll see what happens. We'll see, we'll see. It's a huge game changer. Huge. Some comments are filled with Becca's that here. Yeah, no, Becca's not even here right now, is she? I didn't see her come in if she is. It has to work this time. It has to, or I'll cry. I'll be so sad. Fingers crossed for you, but it's okay to cry. Yeah, right? So, tonight, after everything, it's hilarious, right? Tonight, after work and everything, we're going to stay at my aunt's house because the construction starts early tomorrow morning. So tomorrow you will have book club with me at a different location, same time, same phone, different house. My aunt, however, some of you may not know this, watches our book club things after. Was it the comfy? Yeah, it could be. Probably is. She actually sometimes watches our book club lives after, so she'll be joining us probably for book club. my aunt was listening to the Once and Future Witches, which we all read, and she started to listen to it on an audiobook that she got from the library, and she said to me, I returned it because I prefer to listen to you read it. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. Apparently you can't have anyone comment on your comfort. That's funny. It is the word comfort, because that got filtered also. It was comfy, because Amanda just got, why are we filtering the word comfortable in all of its forms? My computer just changed farfalle or falafel. Oh, I read that wrong. It's falafel. That's funny. That is funny. Falafel. You're like, no, that's not it. That's not it. I made too much milk by a significant margin, but you know what? That's okay. I have time to drink it. Apparently you can't comment on people's... Why is that true? I was able to approve it, thankfully. Apparently I'm not allowed to work today. I mean, that's okay. Mods, can you change the setting? Comfy on the block. Comfy's definitely not on the blocked list. A lot of stuff gets filtered that we definitely don't have on the blocked list, for sure. It's weird what they choose. It's beyond ridiculous. Hey, Becca. Good morning. All right. We will not, however, have the Nespresso machine with us because I can rabbit hole of how people pronounce bagel. How do people pronounce bagel? Bagel? Is there another way to pronounce bagel besides just bagel? Am I like... What? How else do you pronounce bagel? Bagel? Uh-oh, we have a glue problem. Oh no, hold on. I was making slime here yesterday. Yesterday I made all the clear bases, a lot of them, which was great, but apparently I spilled glue. Bagel instead of bagel. Interesting. Bagel. You get bagel. You could eat your bagel for breakfast. It is offensive. No one should say bagel. I don't like bag instead of bay. I prefer bay. Bagel. Even when you got an accent, you say bagel, not bagel. Who here says bagel? Listen, I don't like it. We're on a little early because someone's a little sleepy. And by a little sleepy, I mean a lot of sleepy. But, okay, really quickly, before we read, and I'm not going to take a lot of time to do this, but I want to, is that like the same people who say milk instead of milk with an E? Or like bag instead of bag? So I posted something on my baby wearing page this morning that I feel really strongly about. And you guys already know that I feel strongly about this because I've told you guys here. But what I basically said was, if you are an influencer or a content creator of any kind and you are going to post yourself baby wearing, you have the responsibility to look it up. Wash instead of washed, so true. You have the responsibility to look it up and do it correctly, because you will influence, literally, other people. Can I get images for the book thing I'm making? Do you want them Al or patron? I don't know what AIL is. I'm sorry. So I said that, and I feel that way. And a different email's fine. Yeah, email's fine. So I said that, and another person from my class responded that they feel conflicted about that. And they said, you don't know what you don't know, and those influencers are getting so much unsolicited parenting advice anyway. If they feel confident in how they're wearing their baby, even if they're wrong, they're probably not going to look it up. And I disagree. I think that you should be required to look it up. I do. And I don't think the fact that they're getting a lot of unsolicited advice precludes them from doing the right thing. I don't know. Do you guys, where do you guys fall on this? Like, tell me if I'm wrong here. Like, be real with me. You know, this is where we're real. This is book club. We talk to each other honestly here. Am I crazy for thinking that if you have a following, you have a responsibility to do the right thing? Like, okay, so I'm going to tell you why I eventually like broke this morning and posted about this. I'm just going to give you a real quick rundown. So you guys all know one of my favorite groups on Facebook is Let Us Make Small Decisions For You. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that group where you post like, oh, whatever. This morning, somebody posted, good morning, Avery. Somebody posted, help me decide between 2 Halloween costumes for my infant. Oh, I got an item from Ray. What's an item? It just says item and it's filtered. Item? Weird. So that's completely innocuous, right? But the person's baby isn't born yet, so she posted 2 pictures of what she would like the Halloween costumes to be. One is a baby as Winnie the Pooh, and one is a baby as Roo, like kangaroo. From Winnie the Pooh as well. And the pictures are adorable, but the picture of the baby who is Roo is an influencer that I do follow and have followed for many years, and she has a baby that's just a little older than my baby. Her baby, I think, is about 1 year old now. And does it think I'm bullying you? I don't know, maybe it does. I think once you unblock a person, they should just like, I don't know. Anyway, the picture of her holding the Roo baby is this influencer that I follow wearing her baby, who at the time was not even a month old, on a tush baby facing forward. The baby is like this, like slumped over, very clearly not able to support its own airway or anything. Even if you don't know anything about baby wearing, you see a slumped over infant and you're like, something is wrong, right? Forget the baby wearing side of it. No one should be holding their infant like this. Like, that's just not, it's I'm sorry, it's not safe, okay? So like, all of the rest aside. And that's what made me comment it, because people see her wearing a very tiny baby on this device. And so I said, before I posted it, I said, let me see how long it would take me to find the information about this device. So what I typed into Google was tush baby age range. That's it. That's all I put in. And it took me 30 seconds to find the required age range and development for forward facing a baby on a tush baby. They have a chart, okay? So it's not like this takes a lot of research, you guys. It took 30 seconds. If you don't have 30 seconds to devote to your child's safety, don't have one. I said what I said. If you don't have 30 seconds to devote to your child's safety, don't have one. That's it. That's all I have for today. But they're already here. Okay, well, if they're already here, then you better devote that time, Becca. Anyway, they should be looking up a way to wear them before doing it. Right. But like, and like, look, some things are unclear. Some manuals are unclear. This one wasn't unclear. Those seats are not made for newborns. And by using it in a photo shoot for Halloween with your baby as an influencer, other people are going to do it. If you have 1 million followers and you do that, tell it to make, okay, but that's different. That's so different, Becca, than when he couldn't even sit up. You know what I mean? He is responsible for his own safety. I agree with you. At this point, I think he is. Yes, I agree. Anyway, those are my thoughts. You should always have the time to devote to your child's safety. I agree. You know I agree. I devoted an entire hundreds of dollars in a class to this child's safety. All of those hours, she was forced to come to class with me, unfortunately for her, but it is what it is. She's over it now. All right, well, anyway, that's my thought on the matter. I feel it's even worse when you look up kangaroo costume and her picture comes up. You know exactly who I'm talking about then, don't you? You know exactly who I'm talking about. And I like her, I do. I think she's great. And I think what she does for a variety of marginalized communities is great. I think her platform overall is great. That's why I'm not saying her name. Generally, she is great. The baby wearing is scary. Yeah. I agree with you. So, like, what you're saying here is kind of my point, right? Like, if you're an influencer and you become, you know, the person that they go to for that kind of stuff, is small 4.5 mouth on the back safe? So that's carrier dependent, right? Not a situation where you want to go, no, I told you so. Yeah, exactly. So Amanda asked, and it was filtered, so that's why I was reading it out loud. Is a small 4.5 old on the back safe? Yes and no, carrier dependent, right? So in a soft structured fabric wrap, yes, 100% yes. I wore her when she was 3 months old on my back in a fabric wrap. Totally fine. Fabric medi, woven wrap, as long as it's not a stretchy wrap. So yeah, you can totally do that. Those are the only cases where you can do it before they can sit independently. That's not true, not the only case. There is one brand of Ombohimo's Naked Panda designs, they don't make them anymore, where you can wear a smaller baby on your back in those. Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, Becca, I mean, when you look at her, you know why I follow her, right? It's like we have the same aesthetic, so she's great, right? Anyway, to Amanda's point, yes, I can even show you guys pictures and videos of me wearing her at that age. It's totally fine. It's a skill. You have to learn how to do it, you know? But you see what I was talking about when you look it up, right? How the baby's all slumped over and not safe. Like, it doesn't take a baby wearing expert to see how that baby's slumped and say, that doesn't seem right. Something looks wrong here. You know what I mean? Hey, Liz. So anyway, we are starting part 2 of the book today. This is book 2 of Growing Men, Mormon, and Snowmen. Do people tell her? I have privately sent her a DM, and I know she sees my DMs because she's responded to other ones before. I didn't send it in a judgy way. I was just like, hey, you might want to look this up. She did not respond to that message. She's responded to my other parenting, like, whatever messages. Like, I've sent a message to her saying like, oh my God, we have the same onesie. And I sent a picture like of our matching onesies, and she responded to that. She did not respond to the safety concern. So there's nothing I can do. I've done everything I can. I didn't say it publicly. I didn't shame her. I sent it real quiet on the sly. You know, I don't know. My investigative skills are subpar and I can't find it. I'll send it to you later, Ray. If he comes early and she has a Cindy, yes, 100%. Yes, 100%. I mean, look, here's the other thing, you guys. You can do the kangaroo costume and wear them like this. It's still cute. The baby doesn't have to be facing forward like an actual kangaroo. People are still going to get the concept, and it's still cute. Put them in this. This is a pouch. Put them in a little sling, and it's like, oh my God, look at my little kangaroo in my little pouch. It totally works. I vote yeah. Like, the person who asked us to make the decision, I was like, look, I think you should do the kangaroo costume because that's freaking cute. Just don't wear it like that. Super cute. All right, here we go. Gaddism. A career is not built in a day. Frog in my throat, because I didn't get sleep. It's fine, don't worry about it. A career is not built in a day, but rather in a string of days one might even call a lifetime. Over the course of that lifetime, a career may take many twists and turns, the rides up and down of success and failure. A successful career is often defined by a variety of metrics, including but not limited to money, output, status, power, fame, return on investment, followers, and reputation. By those metrics, Benito Mussolini and Krusty the Clown have both had successful careers. Coincidentally, it has never been a successful career that I have been interested in chasing, but rather something far more enduring, far more compelling, and far more difficult to achieve. A legacy. Chapter 4. Spell check. Hey, Josh, it's Rye. Any chance I could get you to come to LA for 2 months? My friend Ryan Dixon, who has graduated a year before me from CMU's directing program, had recently been hired by a small theater group to put on a show at a small local West Hollywood theater called the Elephant Asylum. He was now calling me to see if there was any way that I could come out to LA for 2 months to put on a production of All in the Timing by David Ives. And I explained to Ryan that I was currently living on a small couch in Queens and had no place to stay in LA because Seth and Bryce's one-bedroom apartment was currently fully occupied. He told me that I could live with him and his landlord/roommate, a middle-aged single woman with a house in Burbank who had a spare half bedroom. I figured nothing else was on the horizon acting-wise, and an opportunity to live in with my buddy and this strange older woman who was weirdly comfortable with having two 22-year-old roommates, well, I had nothing to lose except a plane ticket money and my pride, so I booked a flight and I went out to LA. Within the first few days of me being in LA, Ryan had put together a table read to figure out the casting decisions. All in the Timing is a series of hilarious, existential, and surreal short plays that involve everything from Leon Trotsky getting assassinated with a pickaxe over and over again to a group of chimps named after famous authors who were expected to write Hamlet. I forced my best friend Seth to go to the table read with me, and the two of us joined a group of people that neither of us had ever met before, who were all a part of a pre-existing acting troupe that had already done a few shows together. These experiences are always slightly awkward, especially when everyone else already knows each other and you're the new guy. One of the actresses in the room was a beautiful young woman with black hair, deep brown eyes, and a killer smile named Ida, pronounced Ida. I like that he put that in there for me because I would have said it wrong. She was tasked with playing Mrs. Trotsky to my Leon Trotsky, and I quickly threw together a makeshift Russian accent and jumped into the read. She laughed, and any initial attraction I had for her quickly extinguished as she let out a Fran Drescher caliber cackle. Oh, poor Ida, whatever. After the read, we had a fairly quick exchange and we went our separate ways. Later, I would learn that she thought I was both arrogant as hell and gay, apparently because Seth and I had talked exclusively to each other all night, which I guess makes people gay. Nevertheless, as the week went, he said that, not me, but he's right. That is a weird assumption to make. Just because you talk to your friend who's a guy doesn't make you gay. Nevertheless, as the weeks went on, we were officially cast in the roles of Mr. and Mrs. Trotsky, and our casual disregard for each other soon became an intoxicating attraction. Half Persian and half Italian, she was unlike anybody I had ever dated before. Half Persian and half Italian. Apparently, I'm Josh Gad's type, which I think was part of the allure. That's really funny. She was fiery as hell and had a wicked sense of humor that was both biting and sharp. She was an East Coast girl, having lived in Washington, D.C. for most of her young life after relocating from Iran during the Revolution and then to Italy a few years later. Every time I was near her, my heart would beat through my chest. She and I were soon flirting nonstop during rehearsals to the point where Ryan would have to interject to keep us on track. But the more time we spent together, the more obvious it became that we had incredible chemistry. There was only one problem. She had a boyfriend of 5 years, a fact I only learned about while eavesdropping on her and her girlfriends in the alley behind the theater. Author's note. Eavesdropping on someone that you have the hots for is not a recommended tactic for both legal and ethical reasons. I would advise readers to avoid this tactic unless sanctioned by the person in question. The second option, of course, is to put it in writing years later, nationally published in a piece of tell-all literature. End quote. Suffice to say, I was shattered. She was legitimately the first girl that I had fallen for in LA, and it was just my luck that she had a boyfriend. Sure, I'd had dalliances here and there, but nobody I was serious about. In fact, LA had terrified me relationship-wise because everything about the dating scene in LA just felt bizarre and foreign. Author's note. Please allow me one brief tangent now where I take you on a slight detour to illustrate my point. My first week out of school in Los Angeles, a girl I had casually hooked up with in college invited me to her boyfriend's house for a chill evening. She sent me an address in a hilly, wealthy district of Los Angeles called Mount Olympus, which is such a perfect name for a mythical level of strangeness that awaited me that evening. Back then, there were no real GPS devices, so I had to use this large book of maps called the Thomas Guide as I made my way through the winding and arboreal terrain of the Hollywood Hills with a giant book of maps in one hand and my rental car steering wheel in the other hand. And when I finally stopped and pulled up to the house nestled high atop this hill befitting the gods, I got out of the car and approached an intimidatingly massive door frame that looked straight out of Jurassic Park. This will be ironic in a moment. And I rang the bell, and a few seconds later, my friend, dressed in a bathrobe, answered the door. And before I had time to ask why she was in a bathrobe, her boyfriend, the owner of this monstrosity of a house, strolled up beside her in a matching bathrobe. It was Jeff Goldblum. I was completely baffled. My friend was casually dating a superstar, which she had neglected to mention on the phone, and for some reason they were both dressed as if they were welcoming me to a Four Seasons spa instead of their home. Well, I handed them a cheap bottle of wine that I had purchased, and they invited me to sit on a short, round, backless seat, opposed their two short, round, backless seats, as the three of us sat in a triangular formation and we had a small talk. So, Josh, what do you do? Well, he hadn't introduced himself to me, but should I still call him Jeff, seeing as that everyone in the Western world, myself included, knew his name? I'm an actor, I said. Great. What, do you do? I was beyond confused. I thought the profession that I mentioned had given it away, but I guess he needed me to clarify further for some reason. I act, I answered, not quite knowing a better way to communicate whatever it was he wasn't understanding. No, Jeff Goldblum said. What method do you practice? Oh, I said, looking at my friend for some help but I was only getting a sweet smile and nothing more in return. Different styles, that I learned in school. He then leaned in and he said, are you happy? And I said, yes. And he repeated, are you happy? Once again, unsure if I was on candid camera, I looked around the room and repeated, yes. And by the third time the question was posed, I realized that I was being engaged in a Meisner exercise, a method of acting in which you repeat the same phrase over and over again until it becomes fully lived in and believed. Why I was playing this game with a robed Jeff Goldblum in his Mount Olympus home on a small, uncomfortable cushion, I had and still have no idea. But by the end of this call and response, Jeff nodded and told me that I had done a good job. I laughed, perplexed by the strange out-of-body experience that I had just had, and asked to use the bathroom, where I splashed water on my face to make sure that I wasn't dreaming. And when I walked out, Jeff offered me an opportunity to audit his acting class. I explained to him that I had literally just finished 4 years of consecutive acting classes, and yeah, I would absolutely take him up on his offer. I left shortly thereafter, completely mystified but also exhilarated that I had for some unknown reason done a weird dramatic sparring with one of the greatest to ever do it, even if it was simply because he was just trying to land a new customer. I have since seen Jeff Goldblum at various functions, and I could not bring myself to approach him because I wouldn't even know what to say, and I couldn't act like we'd never met before, even though there is no earthly way he remembers me. That's funny. That is funny. And that ends the little parenthetical aside. So now we're back to the regular chapter. So, suffice to say, the LA social scene can be weird. So when I finally met this awesome down-to-earth chick, I was like, ah, man, I hit the jackpot, except for that one small stumbling block of her having a boyfriend. And as the rehearsals progressed, it became known to me by the other cast members in the show that things were not going great between her and her then partner. So I waited in the proverbial and literal wings for my chance to swoop in. By the end of the run, she had officially ended things with her boyfriend, and I was off to the races. For the record, her ex was an awesome guy named Adam, who was an actor by day and a rapper by night, who looked like a young Mark Wahlberg, only better looking, and who would also later attend my wedding, which totally wasn't weird for me at all, he says sarcastically, and still not bitter at his wife for inviting her insanely sexy ex to our nuptials. Following in the footsteps of other classy, timeless romantic dalliances like Romeo and Juliet, Jack and Rose, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, our first hookup was in a public bathroom at the Universal Hard Rock, with very impatient customers not exactly thrilled that we were using the stalls for extracurricular activities. It was like a pent-up explosion of lust finally allowed to burst open wide. After that evening, she and I would spend every waking hour with each other, going to the movies, concerts, dinner, and bars. There was only one problem. I didn't have a place, and she was in between places, so we would end up crashing with friends. One brisk 4th of July evening, she and I went up to Seth and Bryce's apartment rooftop. Seth and Bryce were out of town, and we had no way to get into their apartment, so we decided to camp out on the roof. Unfortunately, the temperature dropped by 30 degrees by the next morning, and we were practically frozen as the morning shift finally came up to the roof and kicked us both out. We were unhoused but in love. Of our many early romantic experiences, perhaps my favorite was the night that I decided to rent us a movie that neither of us had ever seen before or even heard of. As the two of us cuddled on our friend Rosa's couch, I sat back and I hit play, and for the next 2 hours, any romantic expectations were squelched by the unexpected traumas of a little movie that I had handpicked called Deliverance. For a while, all we could say to each other every time we kissed was, "Squeal like a pig." I don't get the reference, but I'm sure it's traumatizing. Another thing I soon fell in love with was her gullibility. One day I convinced her that there were drive-through mammograms. Another day I had her believing that meteorologists were predicting a massive earthquake by the end of the week. The more insane the statement, the more completely she would fall into my trap. By early 2005, I was certain that I had found not only an amazing girlfriend, but somebody to build a life with. The only problem was I had no way to afford that life. Here's a picture of them. It's very cute. Other than coaching debate students at various schools around the country, I had no consistent source of income. One day, I called my agent in LA and told him after a long period of no auditions that I needed to go out for something, anything. He called me back and he said, "Got you." And an hour later, I had an email that I had an audition for a live Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs stage show at Disneyland to play Dopey, the only dwarf who doesn't speak. It was not only such a dick move, but really disheartening as well. I basically had an agent who thought my career and ambitions were a joke, and I started to wonder if maybe he was right. A few months later, I received a tip that the hit Broadway show, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, was holding auditions. By this point, numerous people who had seen it, including my friends Seth and Bryce, were calling me and telling me I had to audition to play the role of William Barfay, a role made famous by the Tony Award-winning performance of the brilliant Dan Fogler. A show which featured a group of adult actors portraying 10-year-olds, all competing in a local small-town spelling bee. It had a hit run at the Barrington Stage Company, followed by another smash off-Broadway run at Second Stage. Now, almost a year into its run, it was holding auditions, and I knew I had to get in on them. Seeing as my agency was useless, I asked my friend Ben if he could reach out to the casting director, who was a friend of his, to get me in the door. Ben, ever the loyal friend, called her up and got her to agree to see me. The auditions were held at a local church in Hollywood, and I sang an original song from a musical called Fat Camp that I was working on with Bryce, Seth, and their friend Dane. I saw Fat Camp, didn't know he was a part of the original. It's a funny show. The assistant director and then casting director had me do a scene and little choreography. They seemed very pleased and told me that they would share my tape with the entire creative team and get back to me. And about a week later, I received a phone call that they were going to offer me the role of Barfay in San Francisco. On the one hand, I was thrilled that I had booked the role, but on the other hand, I had my heart set on doing it on Broadway, an insane wish considering that I had no real professional theater credits to my name and no formal musical theater training either. Everyone I spoke to was thrilled for me, but a little voice in the back of my head kept saying, "Aim higher." I was, after all, the same guy who had written that 10-minute speech about taking chances and risking it all in life. Oh, hey, Naisa. Hello. Everyone outside of Ida thought that I was crazy, but I had made up my mind. I was going to turn it down, even though I had no other opportunities. In all caps, it says, "F us, F you." While that wasn't verbatim what was said to me, it still captures the essence of the production's response to me. In what shouldn't have come as a shock, the creative team was furious and basically told me that they would never see me for anything ever again. What the hell had I done? I had gone from getting a break to pissing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity away. What was I supposed to do now? The reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I was never going to get a chance like this again. After falling into a depression, I decided to reevaluate my life. I was now about 3 years out of college with nothing on my resume outside of an episode of ER. Who was I fooling? I wasn't cut out for this. My mother always told me that I would make a good lawyer, so yeah, that's what I would do. Like both of my other brothers, I'd go to law school and get a good paying job, and I would start a family. I told Ida about my plan, and she was perplexed. Why are you going to law school? Because I want to take care of you. She retorted, I don't need you to take care of me, and I certainly don't need you to give up on your dreams to do it. I was dead set, however. This was my decision, and I was sticking with it. I next called my mom to tell her the good news. If my wife was baffled, my mother's reaction was even more shocking. I'm truly disappointed in you. I couldn't believe my ears. What Jewish mother hears their son say, I want to go to law school, and responds with anything other than massive celebration involving everyone in a 10-mile radius, including people they don't even know? She continued, you've spent close to 15 years dreaming about being an actor, and after barely 3 years of living out that dream, you're just giving up? I heard crying on the other end of the phone. My mother so fully believed in me that she was pleading through tears for me to start believing in myself as much as she did. I had no response. She was right. What the hell was I doing? There were people who spent their entire lives chasing their dreams through thick and thin, and here I was, giving it all up after 2.5 years because of a little rejection. Was I not the same person who had just been offered a role in a national tour of a hit musical and turned it down because I believed I was capable of more? The only things standing in the way of my dreams now were me and my own insecurities. I told my mom, thank you. I hung up the phone and I immediately called my one decent agent in New York City, Hannah Roth. And I told her that I wanted another shot at Spelling Bee, and she told me they had already cast the San Francisco role, but that Dan Fogler was going to leave the company in a few months, and they were probably going to look for replacements. The only problem with that piece of news was that they were absolutely not interested in me because I had already turned down the other opportunity that they had presented me. Before I continue on, I should tell you that if you get a national tour role like this, like the San Francisco one, and then the Broadway guy leaves, you'll get bumped up. I mean, like, that's pretty common. Like, it's a really, hey, are you okay? Hey, hey, no sad dreams, no sad dreams. No, 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 no sad dreams. Shh, shh, shh. It's pretty common to get bumped up. So if he had just taken the role, he probably would have gotten the Broadway role anyway. So, like, we all know it eventually comes around, but, like, bro, what are you doing? Yeah, exactly. Shit. What a moron I had been, but I couldn't let that get in my way. I was determined. There was an opportunity here, and I somehow had to turn this no into a yes. So once again, I had my incredible friend Ben reach out to his acquaintance in casting and tell her that I would literally do anything for one more chance to show them what I could do. But as expected, he was told there was no real interest after the opportunity that I had already squandered. Still renewed with energy, I told Hannah that I not only wanted her repping me from now on, and not that schmuck in LA, I immediately started going out on more auditions, including for the role of Dwight Schrute in The Office, which made a very good impression on renowned casting director Allison Jones, who would later be responsible for a different breakthrough in my career. I didn't book a series regular on any sitcoms, but I did manage to get offered a guest starring role on a short-lived sitcom, the name of which and the cast of it, sadly, I cannot remember. And that was going to bring me to New York, so I called up Hannah to strategize and told her to let the folks at Spelling Bee know that I was going to be in town and I would love the opportunity to come in and audition for them. We heard nothing back. As December date for my shoot approached, I received a call that the role I had gotten had been rewritten, and they were no longer going to be needing my services. I was bummed. Figuring that I was going to be alone for the holidays, I booked a flight to Florida to spend it with my family, and when I landed on the tarmac, I opened my Motorola flip phone, and I saw that I had a few voicemails. Hey, Josh, it's Hannah. It's urgent. Will you call me? I clicked onto the next one. Josh, it's Hannah again. Where are you? I didn't need to listen to the third message. I knew who it was from. I immediately called her back while we were still taxiing. We just got a call from Spelling Bee. They're seeing a small group of guys in New York City tomorrow, and they asked me if you're in the city, because if you are, you can go in for the auditions. I barely let her finish the sentence before saying, tell them I'm in the city and I'll be there. I immediately called my mother and Stan and told them that I needed a flight out of Fort Lauderdale to JFK, as well as a hotel for one night. And when I told them what it was for, they sprang to the rescue and booked the first flight out. I arrived in New York City around midnight and drove in a taxi to the Hilton on 6th Avenue between 53rd and 54th Streets. That is going to be the home of BroadwayCon 10 years after this happens. Or so. That's very sweet. I unpacked, I got some rest, and I woke up at 6:30 a.m. the next morning to warm up and went to the audition. It was held in a large rehearsal space. About 15 slightly overweight men in loosely fitting clothing were going over lines in the hallway. I was brought into the room to do my song and a scene from the show. I sang my standard Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat from Guys and Dolls, and then I did a scene between Barfay and Olive Ostrovsky, a female contestant in the show. The creative team seemed pleased enough and invited me to do the dance audition. Amazing. It was an unmitigated disaster. Everyone in the room had training except for me. I flailed around like a beached whale, unsuccessfully trying to flop back into the ocean. I knew any chance I had was now over. There was no way that they would invite me to the next round, having just seen me dance like a pirate with one leg. 20 minutes later, they asked me if I could come back and read for the director. I was shocked. They were going to give me another chance even though I completely botched the dance call? Okay, I thought to myself, well, don't screw this up. The director in question was none other than one of the most influential directors/creative minds in theater history, the brilliant and insanely talented James Lapine. Lapine, who had storied relationship with inarguably the greatest composer in musical theater history, Stephen Sondheim, had written the books for Sunday in the Park with George, Passion, and Into the Woods, all three of which he had also directed. He had also worked with the renowned William Finn, collaborating on the Marvin trilogy, and once again on the Tony Award-winning 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. He was a legend, and so my heart skipped a beat when I entered the room. He was not eager for pleasantries and immediately disposed with a small talk asking me to sing for him. So I sang. He didn't seem very impressed, and he asked me if I had anything else, and I sang a ballad. Once again, he seemed nonplussed, and then he asked me to do the scene, stopping every few seconds to tell me something that I wasn't doing right. He said a few casually cruel things to me, and at the end of the audition, he gave me a curt thank you and sent me on my merry way. Well, opportunity number 2 was a bust, I thought to myself, and as I walked back to my hotel, head buried in my chest to avoid anyone seeing my disappointment, I received a call. I was to be at the Circle of the Square Theater at 5 p.m. for a final callback. A final callback? Once again, I did not believe my ears. Twice today, I had thought I had completely shit the bed, and now I was presumably one step away from achieving my dream of being on Broadway. I showed up to the theater expecting multiple people in the waiting room, but it was only me and one other guy, Jordan Gelber, one of the new stars of the hit musical Avenue Q. The two of us made some small talk. Jordan was brought out first. For what felt like 20 of the longest minutes of my life, I listened from backstage as he sang and performed his scene. And finally, he came backstage and he wished me luck. When I walked out on stage, I saw 20 plus people, creatives, producers, investors, sitting in the audience, staring back at me. My nerves exploded in my chest. The layout of the circle and the square for Spelling Bee was interesting in that it was a thrust stage. The stage extends into the auditorium, surrounded on 3 sides by the audience. The intimate 700-seat theater is cozy, yet incredibly intimidating because it's still a Broadway theater and still home to many iconic performers, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Joanne Woodward, Annette Bening, and George C. Scott, to name a few. The craziest part of this whole experience was that I still hadn't even seen the production because I was broke, and was completely in the dark as to what the show and performance originated by Dan even were. I had never even seen a clip of the show. Sidebar from your narrator. What Josh is failing to tell you all is that there were $20 lottery tickets available for Spelling Bee at every performance, where you could sit in the bleachers at the front 20 rows of the stage. Many were available many days. He could have seen the show for $20, which is cheaper than eating in New York. I don't know what he's talking about. Now we'll continue. That's how this girl saw it, with him in it, all the cheap. I stared out into the crowd, and after a silent beat, I said, I have about 10 minutes. What have you all prepared for me today? And after a few laughs and some stern stares, I was told to sing a few bars of my song. Midway through, I was stopped by James Lapine, and told that the Tony Award-winning nominee, Celia Keenan-Bolger, I love her, for her work as Olive in the show, would be reading opposite me. Okay, this is unusual, you guys. Very unusual to have someone like her reading. It was super common knowledge at the time to theater people. It wouldn't have been common knowledge to someone outside of theater, but definitely common knowledge to someone who was like auditioning for a show. Like, if he didn't know about it when his friends worked in theater, that would be really weird, because it was like a big deal at the time. They don't do it anymore. For Celia Keenan-Bolger at her like caliber to be at his audition is super cool. Celia walked on stage. By the way, she's insanely talented. Kindly introduced herself, and the two of us began performing the scene. Midway through the dialogue, I was once again stopped. Suddenly, James called out from the top level of the audience and said, "Can I please see you up here, Mr. Gadd?" I was perplexed. I had done a total of about 1.5 minutes of auditioning, and I was now being called for a personal discussion with the director. When I got up to him, all the others in the area dispersed. James looked me up and down and said, "I don't think you're taking this seriously." "Excuse me?" I said, and he continued, "Do you have any idea the kind of people who would kill to be on Broadway? Julia Roberts is only just now about to make her debut." "Why should someone like you, who thinks this is all just a joke, get that opportunity?" I was shell-shocked. "Someone like me? You," James persisted, "are not a serious actor. This is the biggest moment of your life, and you walked on stage and the first thing you do is crack a joke? That's what amateurs do." In that moment, I knew I had two choices. The obvious choice would be to kowtow and plead for forgiveness, hoping that by conceding to these wild accusations, I would somehow win him back and beg to be a part of this award-winning production. Then, of course, there was the much riskier second option. Well, I'm guessing you know which one I chose. You can question my talent, you can question my singing, you can question my dancing, and hell, you can even question my acting, but don't you dare question my commitment to my craft. For 4 years, I spent every last penny I had going to a conservatory to study anything but acting. I have worked tirelessly to get better every day of my life to do what I do. I live, I breathe, I eat, I sleep acting. This right now is indeed the biggest moment of my life, so forgive me if when I walked out in front of 20 people who are going to decide whether or not I get my big break, I cracked a joke to break the ice, seeing as the other option would have been to projectile vomit all over all of you because of my nerves. I guess I made the wrong choice. Good luck to you and with your show. I wish you the best. I got up and I stormed off. I grabbed my things backstage and I congratulated Jordan on getting the job, and I walked back to my hotel in tears and rage. I couldn't pack my things fast enough. My mother, of course, called to ask me how it went and took everything not to let her know how heartbroken I was. Given her confidence in me, I simply told her that I had not gotten the role. As I was heading to the door, bag in hand, I got another call. This time, it was from my agent, Hannah. "Hey!" "Hi." I barely got out. "Now's not a good time." "Well," she continued, "James just sent 2 tickets to your hotel to see Spelling Bee this evening." I couldn't believe the nerve of this guy. "Why on earth?" I hissed into the phone through gritted teeth. "Would I ever want to see that show?" "Because," she responded, "he figures you should probably see the show before you take over the role in a month." Everything stopped, including my heart. "Wait, what did you just say?" Hannah screamed back at me as if trying to wake me up from a nightmare. "You got the role. You're going to be on Broadway." Never in my life had I been so incredibly certain of one result, only to have the complete opposite outcome happen. For the life of me, I couldn't comprehend how I had gone from practically the single worst audition of my life to the single biggest break that I had ever gotten. It was as if the universe was bored that day and had been looking for something fun to do. Any uncertainty I had about why James had said and done what he had said and done would soon be answered over the next hellish year of my lifetime in that show. But for now, I was blissfully ignorant. I was going to be on Broadway. That evening, I went to the theater and I watched this magical and hilarious show for the first time, studying Dan's every brilliant move. Sitting there that night, I couldn't comprehend that in a few short weeks, I was going to be up on that stage playing this iconic role. And for the next 3 weeks, I would rehearse with the assistant director, musical director, and choreographer by day and watch the show by night. I ate, slept, and breathed Spelling Bee. I even went to a school to spend a day with elementary-aged kids, studying their behavior, their gestures, hoping to incorporate them into my performance as a socially awkward 10-year-old master speller who used his magic foot to spell out every letter of the word before he would say it out loud. On Tuesday, January 31st, I made my Broadway debut. I was terrified standing at the curtain waiting for the first chords to start, but as I took that stage for the first time, I became so unbelievably excited and grateful that I was finally be given the chance to do what I wanted to do for a living and simultaneously get paid for it. Everything went great until towards the end of the show, I literally forgot how to spell my final word, and I needed the cast to help me improv my way out of it, much like an actual 10-year-old might. But otherwise, it was a blast. The next day, I received a dressing down from James Lapine, who had notes on what seemed like every single line and every choice that I was making. I figured this was completely normal because A, I was new to Broadway, and B, I was replacing a Tony winner. What I did not anticipate, however, is that this would continue for the next few days, and then weeks, and then months. Here's a picture of him in Spelling Bee. He was great, by the way. I can say that, having seen it. During the course of my run, I did nothing that would please Lapine. Even if I was doing what he asked me to do, the joy I initially had coming into work was replaced by fear. I was terrified that on any given night, James would be in the audience waiting with bated breath to tear me apart once again. The cast was also not particularly supportive. Yikes, that's sad to hear. Apart from a small few, most of them seemed like they were annoyed by my mere presence. It's funny now because I consider all of them close friends, especially Jesse Tyler Ferguson, but back then I think I didn't quite know how to deal with one of their own leaving. They didn't know how to deal with one of their own leaving and a random new guy coming to join their long-running party. So that is true. The guy he replaced was the only person from the original cast to leave at that point, and they had been working on this for many years as a group. They like wrote the show together. So him leaving, very, very weird. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be supportive of Josh, but it probably was very odd. So I can't really blame them, even though at the time I felt so alone and depressed. Dan was the first of the kids to depart, and my suspicion is that the others felt both abandoned and slightly jealous that one of their own was now moving on to Hollywood, while all of them were stuck with this random new guy. In the subsequent years, the cast has not only apologized to me, but has truly gone out of their way to tell me how completely shitty and uncalled for the way I was treated was during that period. Sounds pretty clitterish and tough to break into. Yes, and it's not usually the norm for a Broadway show. Usually the casts are very receptive to new members. This is a pretty rare experience. Unfortunately, the feeling I had at the time was that of being an imposter. What should have been a joyous moment in my life was just the opposite, toxic and brutal. Every day I wasn't allowed to be funny or make spontaneous new choices. I had to make every decision based on what I thought James would want me to do, which is not a recipe for success. And as the show progressed, James became more hostile and more disparaging. Often James would call a rehearsal and spend the entire time belittling me in front of the cast. By 6-month mark, I wanted out, but they had optioned to extend me, and unfortunately, I had to choose to do just that. I begged the producer, David Stone, to let me go for my own mental health, but he told me that it wasn't an option. He did agree, however, to let me audition for film and TV and offered to give me an out if I booked one of those gigs. One of the first things that I went out for was a new James Cameron movie called Avatar. I wanted to play the role of Jake Sully's best friend and translator to the alien race known as the Na'vi. I put myself on tape and shortly thereafter got called in and that Cameron wanted me to fly to Los Angeles for a final callback at his Lightstorm production offices, a role that I apparently did not get because while James Cameron was thrilled with my audition, when I was turned into a digital avatar, I suppose I need to stop and reread this because this is too funny to mess up. A role that apparently I did not get because while James Cameron was said to be thrilled with my audition, when I was turned into a digital avatar, I supposedly looked like a tall, overweight Smurf. A few days before I was to leave for LA, I went out to the Palm restaurant near our theater to celebrate Celia's last show. James pulled up a seat next to me and told me that he heard I was going to miss a show to audition for a movie. I thanked him for letting me out for a day, and he responded that he had told the producers not to let me out, but they had done so anyway. Attempting to once again assuage his ego, I said, well, just to be clear, I intend to finish out my run either way. To which he responded, what makes you think we would even want you back? I finally lost it. Okay, well then fucking fire me, James, fire me. Like, whatever it is, I'm done with it. With James, it was always a mind game. He fed on my insecurities and tried desperately to keep me under his control. Some described it as a way to reassert his authority over those lower than him because Dan apparently did whatever he wanted and didn't let James push him around. Over the years, I have heard time and time again from others who have worked with him. Apparently, especially in the old days, James would hone in on one person in any given cast and make that person his punching bag. I didn't understand the psychology of this, and therefore I will not attempt to remotely analyze it. Years later, James would apologize to me for his behavior, first during my run of the Book of Mormon, and then again when I returned 12 years later to Broadway. One day, during my Gutenberg the musical run, I took him out to dinner to have a heart-to-heart, because despite his abuse 17 years earlier, I really do respect his talents and incredible legacy, and I wanted to put the past to bed. Toward the end of the dinner, he looked at me, fully knowing the answer I would give, and said, "Did you enjoy working with me?" And I laughed and I said, "Are you kidding? No, I hated it. Like, it was truly awful." And he smirked. "Why?" "Because," I said bluntly, "you were a dick to me." He laughed and said, "Well, in all fairness, you need to get your ass kicked. Trust me." As insane as this may sound, I actually think he was absolutely correct, although I do detest his approach. There's no denying that James did prepare me for a career full of ups, downs, lefts, rights, and even though his methodology was frankly psychotic and unnecessarily cruel, while it certainly didn't help me during the run of Spelling Bee, it set me up to pretty much handle any adversity that I would face during the entirety of my career. One day during Spelling Bee's run, Ida and I attended Seth and Bryce's wedding. Like a schmuck, I had forgotten to write a speech for the rehearsal dinner and ran off to the bathroom to jot something quickly on a used napkin. And when I came out, I gave a speech, or rather a roast, that brought down the house, the details of which have been lost to time, and the trash can that napkin speech went right into after the dinner. And while I do not remember any of what I said that night, it was apparently funny enough that the legendary Henry Winkler came up to me afterwards and said, "I'm now coming to see you in your show tomorrow because that was one of the funniest speeches I've ever heard." If you haven't read Henry Winkler's autobiography or memoir as an aside, you should. I've read it. It's funny. Actually, you should listen to it because him narrating it on the audiobook is great. Another person in attendance was the ICM agent named Meredith Weckler. Meredith had been Bryce's agent since college, and I had tried to sign with her as well years earlier, only to fail miserably when she attended a makeshift stand-up routine that I had put on that was an utter debacle. Somehow, I thought that it was smart to do a half-an-hour set without testing any of the material out ahead of time. Coincidentally, that would be the final time that I ever performed stand-up. But on this particular night, Meredith approached me and said, "That was one of the most hilarious speeches I've ever heard. I'd also love to come and see you in your show." After she saw the show, she took me out to dinner and told me why I needed to sign with her. I frankly didn't need an invitation, seeing as how I was already desperate to work with her, but I was also fiercely loyal to my agents then at Gersh, who I had signed with after Hannah, and was scared to fire anyone. After almost a year of courting, I finally acquiesced and signed with the person who would represent me for the rest of my career. And to this day, it's hilarious to me that my TV and film trajectory can all be traced back to a makeshift wedding speech jotted down on a napkin in a bathroom. As I finished my Broadway run, I knew that it was time to leave New York. Ida, who had patiently moved to the city with me and endured living on friends' couches for over a year because even on a Broadway contract I still couldn't afford my own place, was beyond ready to head back to Los Angeles, as was I. With stellar reviews for my Broadway debut and a new killer agent, it was time to give Hollywood another chance. On my flight back home, I picked up a book to prep for an audition I had gotten. The book was called Bringing Down the House by Ben Mesrick, and it was a true story of a group of MIT kids who had swindled the Vegas casinos by counting cards while playing blackjack. Little did I know how much like the characters in that book, I was about to hit the jackpot. True. It's true, he was. He was. All right. Well, we got to finish a whole chapter with no crying. How's that? Well, she doesn't cry during it. Usually she just screams because she's, wants to hang out. Yeah, I'm sure this audiobook is good too. The Henry Winkler one's really great. Well, all good things. Yeah, she woke up extra early this morning. That's why she's so tired. She usually wakes up at 7, and then we play for an hour, and then I shower, and then she eats, and then we come to book club. Today, she decided to wake up at 6 and stay awake until 7:45. So, oh, really? That sounds fun, Roxy. So anyway, I'm going to go feed her and get her ready to go to music class, and I'll see you guys later, all fun stuff. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and tomorrow book club will be in a new locale. Maybe she'll let me sit down tomorrow, who knows. All right, bye guys.